Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a little bit of a different one. I don't know if this is going to be over a speed paint or if I'm just gonna throw it over some random gameplay or whatever, but as I'm sure many of you know, I love doing character backstory videos. This isn't exactly one of those, but I've been wanting to bring more of this sort of content onto my channel, more things like character development, maybe even world building, because as you guys know, I really like writing stories for my characters, and in the long run would like to write my own world to take these characters out of these games, morph them into something original, and put them into my own world so I can write novels over them. But yeah, as you guys have probably noticed, I've recently been getting way too into World of Warcraft, and naturally, of course, I've already been working on some new characters that fit into that. On Patreon, I was actually asked about my ideas for these characters so far, and made a big post about it a couple of weeks ago, particularly about the development of Rindris, who, you can probably tell is the one I've been working on most because of my inability to shut up about him on social media. But after I posted it, I was actually told that it'd be a pretty fun video idea, so you know what? We're doing it. And hopefully this will be a good start to begin bringing more content like this onto the channel, so long as you guys are interested. So of course, these characters started out in World of Warcraft, but I've found in the past few years, since getting really into D&D, I tend to not write characters solely for one universe anymore. Rather, I develop them in a few different universes at one time. I've just found it more exciting and productive, I guess, to develop them in different settings all at once, which I'll getting more into why. But overall, it just seems events in one world help set the stage for events in others. We're going to use Bjorn as a little example. Bjorn had already existed as a character pretty much as long as Gon had, but he was fairly minor for a very long time, both in Elder Scrolls and D&D. I didn't really think to work on him more until one night after we finished playing D&D. In that session, Gon and his friends were traversing a cursed forest in search of a spirit the locals had told them about. This spirit, who turned out to be a demon in the form of a giant wasp, allegedly could help track down a party member that had betrayed them, but naturally, for a cost. The bug demon, as we will be calling him, he will come up again, liked collecting objects or memories of painful sentiment. After naming his price, memories of a dead relative, a former friend's sword, anything of that sort, Gon had an idea. He decided to offer up his memories of Bjorn, his lover from when he lived peacefully in the town of Avondale, a time he both regretted and yearned for. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. He believed it was time wasted, as he should have been working to avenge his grandmother and reclaim his lost throne. Gonir's story, like a lot of my characters, also differs greatly between worlds, though keeps many similarities. If you guys would like to see me word vomit over his D&D stories too sometime, let me know, I'd be happy to do that. And despite believing it was time wasted, it pained him to be taken away from such a comfortable life, so by offering the demon these memories, it would truthfully help Gon anyway. Only after I decided to make Gon forget Bjorn did I begin to obsess over him and work on his character more, because I like to hurt myself too, I guess. First, I began to flesh Bjorn out more in case my beloved, stupid little elf's actions ever came up as a plot point in game. I wanted to make sure Ryder, our DM, had a character to work with. Then I saw a shitpost on Twitter, inspiration truly can come from anywhere, that made me decide not to kill him off before Dawnguard, and rather have him simply become a vampire. A little cliche to have a vampire lover, I know, but that was the games from 2011, you know, it can be a little cheesy, I don't care. That snowballed and I started working on him even more, obsessing over him even more, as I wrote his story in both our D&D world and in Elder Scrolls. Then, an old friend from high school reached out wanting to DM for us. Naturally, as I'd been working on and obsessing over Bjorn, I talked to them about playing as him and began writing a third variant of his story and character to fit into their world. And as a little cherry on top, I also played as him in The Sims and had a little storyline going on there too. It really helps knowing the more mundane parts of your characters, playing as them in The Sims. Highly recommend it if you just want to chill and play a game while still wanting to develop your characters. Honestly, I really enjoyed creating Bjorn this way. I feel like it helped me understand more about him. His motivations, how he reacts to things, plot points to include in different worlds. I'd already worked before on shifting my stories into other worlds, like with Gonair and Teldrin. I found it to be a fun little exercise, but doing it all at once allowed me to flesh him out faster than I believe I would have otherwise. And so, on to the ongoing creation of my newest characters, Rindris and Galaron. But, mostly Rindris. When I first made Rindris, I had just started out on World of Warcraft, and was trying a bunch of different classes just to see what I liked. I've been pretty keen on trying Demon Hunter, a class consisting only of a bunch of edgy, miserable elves. Unfortunately, I couldn't resist. So one evening, as I was getting on to play with my brother to try to get him into the game, I decided to give it a shot. Up until that point, I had just been playing characters I had already established in different universes. Pretty much just Elder Scrolls characters. We know how it goes. But I didn't really have one that fit into Demon Hunter, so I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to finally make a new boy. I've been kind of bitter that nothing in World of Warcraft really worked for Gonair, besides Shaman, which unfortunately elves can't be. So I decided to just take pieces of his character and design and put it into this new character, thinking surely it would never matter, this is my Warcraft character after all, completely different universes. It wouldn't matter if they had their similarities, because they'd never interact and I'd surely never care so much about him. Because he wasn't an Elder Scrolls character. Oops. Well, it turns out I really fucking love World of Warcraft and the Night Elves, and got way too into it all and became really attached to my character. Which was, of course, Rindris. Really, at first, he wasn't much of anything, just your average demon hunter, angry at the Legion, and willing to do whatever he could to end them. But then, as time went on, he became a very self-indulgent character, for lack of a better word. And some way or another, all of my characters have a part of me in them, or part of my aesthetic. That's only natural when it comes to making characters, I think, but Rindris began to become everything I love in a character, and their design very quickly. Even down to his hair and skin, at least in World of Warcraft. Blue and purple, my favorite colors. I gave him flowers and leaves in his hair. I wanted to make sure, despite what he had become, he was still very much a night elf. As I think the perfect way to describe me and what I like would be through the night elves. Can we just start up a Kaldorei core trend, please? I need to find other people with my aesthetic. I calmed down his personality. He wasn't just this angry killing machine anymore, rather a gentle and nature-loving soul who just had a tendency for completely unhinged explosive violence every now and then. As Ryder and I were roaming around doing pet battles in World of Warcraft for the very first time, I saw the most beautiful moth pet, blue and purple and all around lovely. Decided then and there, Rindris loves moths. In fact, Ryder laughed at me a bit because his whole character soon after became very moth-themed. Suddenly, he was the creator of what's called Ahimsa silk in our world, something I love so much, it's non-violent silk making. Before the Third War, in World of Warcraft lore, he had spent his life caring for these moths and perfecting his craft, spending his life in peace and in respect for nature, all that stuff that I do so love, until the Legion came and took it all from him, in the shape of an infernal being catapulted in the sky and landing directly on his land. Ooh. It didn't take long for me to begin to try to piece him to my other characters, as all my other characters are connected in some way. I've always preferred for my stories to lead into one another, just another thing I can't resist doing. I feel like it helps flesh them all out a little more. At first, Rindris and Galaron, who I had only just made and only knew was a little naive and loved big cats. Really, he still needs a lot of work. This, as I said, will mostly be about Rindris. We're both actually the sons of Arvella, the clone daughter of Gonair, who in the Elder Scrolls had found the knowledge of creation in Apocrypha from the notes of stinky Mr. Divathfear himself. However, in D&D, will channel the divine magic of the stars with the help of the priests of his house in order to create his heir. I'm letting Gonair play a bit more into the madness of wanting to become a god king in D&D than in Elder Scrolls. Because unfortunately I don't get to write the future lore for the Dragonborn or the future games, and I'm kind of prepared to just quietly send Gonair away in search of power before the Elder Scrolls 6. But in D&D I might as well let him have some fun. Arvella is essentially his backup. I know I don't think I've ever really mentioned her on the channel before, but she's been around for a while. If he fails to achieve immortality, at least he would have his clone heir to continue to do his bidding, right? This led me to trying my best to put together a story for the Ebonhearts in World of Warcraft, with Gonair being, of course, a night elf, one of the arcane spellcasters before the War of the Ancients, later turning to Druidism after, the Shattering. This makes no sense for those of you that don't understand World of Warcraft lore. I'll try to keep it brief. He later taught Druidism to his daughter Arvella, who I was, of course, playing for a little bit in my World of Warcraft series. Adamo was a Highborn, eventually turned into a Blood Elf, and Teldrin was a Nightborn, stuck in Suramar since the Sundering. All of which is probably still a thing, but I'm not super comfortable with writing characters for World of Warcraft yet. And a lot of it needs adjusting due to changes I've made since, but to be honest, that's about as far as I've gotten with the World of Warcraft stories, so we will just leave that there. I've mainly been focused on writing for a D&D world lately, as that will be the variant I take and change and put into stories someday. I believe it wasn't until me and Ryder had been talking about it all when we thought maybe Rindris and Galaron could simply be Gonair's earlier attempts at achieving a worthy heir, while Arvella had been created through celestial means, or ethereal means in Elder Scrolls. Rindris would be his first attempt through more demonic forces. Of course, that means Daedra in the Elder Scrolls, but that's pretty much as far as his concept goes in Elder Scrolls. So I'll be talking D&D pretty much from this point on, but it's a fun concept that I'm excited to expand more on. Remember that bug demon I mentioned? That was Gonair's first attempt to bargain with this demon yet again. He has low wisdom in D&D, what can I say? Sacrificing the soldiers that escorted him. We're not sure exactly when in the timeline this would be in our world at this point, only that it's, of course, after Gonair hopefully achieves his goals of this campaign and becomes the leader of his house. But yeah, he sacrifices them in return for a powerful, fearsome child, a good heir to his legacy, or something along those lines. After the soldiers are sacrificed, the demon gives Gonair a cocoon. He returns it to his homeland and places it on a branch of a tree in the palace temple's courtyard, where he and the priests tend to it until Rindris is born? Hatched? Emerges? I don't know. Now, usually, making deals with demons isn't a great idea, and naturally, Gonair is strict. The child is fearsome, as he grows into a very large tiefling. I should say that the Ash Elves of Telvada, which is just essentially our tropical Morrowind, are not super familiar with other races other than the super common ones. They live far away on an island and or a series of islands, and are usually quite suspicious of Outlanders. It's just tropical Morrowind. I'm gonna change it later. But yes, this child, he has hooves, he has claws, he has fangs, a tail. Peak tiefling design, in my opinion. He did turn out to be a good heir, but not in the sense that Gonair had meant, but rather that he was very peaceful and good-natured. Something that, by this point, Gonair sees as quite weak, as it was once more so what he was, and went in direct conflict of his warmongering house's ways. Though I would say Rindris would definitely be a better leader than Gonair. I'm just saying. As he is very wise and thoughtful, traits that are revered in the greater Ash Elven society as a whole. And in World of Warcraft, Rindris does end up leading the Illidari, so, really he would be a good heir. But not what Gonair wanted. And so eventually, Gonair made some deals with the Fae, ended up with Galaron, who he also saw as unfit due to his unfortunate himbo disease, and later created Arvella, his perfect heir. Now, I'm going to try to get more into what I have for Rindris' story, but considering it is set in our D&D world, at least most of what I have right now, it may be a little confusing, and is certainly subject to change. I think it would be near impossible to explain all of what's happened in our world and all of its lore since we started playing, but I'll try my best to make sure what you guys need to know is coherent and brief enough. Rindris was kept away from the public eye growing up, only allowed to go between the living quarters and the temple of the palace. The leaders of houses in our world are more so like royalty or emperors rather than, the archmasters are in Elder Scrolls. He spent a lot of time with the priests in the temple, the wise men and women. Couldn't resist. I like the Dunmer, okay? One of whom, in particular, the voice of reason in the house, taught Rindris the importance of peace and living in harmony with the spirits of nature. The Ash Elves are very, spiritual and animistic. He is taught of Firecloak, a god Gonair actually met in his adventures, which I hope isn't too confusing. It's still It's very long and it's still ongoing. Essentially, the story is Gonair's trying to convince Firecloak to come out of his guilt retirement and claim his vengeance on Lolth, who had struck Firecloak down after an act of former brashness and turned him into a demon who actively killed his children, the Sage Elves, who later became the Ash Elves. I don't feel like I'm explaining this very well. It's one of those situations where Gonair really should have taken this story to heart, but he's got unwise bitch disease and most likely won't, and it's actually his son that ends up being the favored of Firecloak. But Rindris quickly adopted practices of non-violence, both in action and thought. He spent his early days learning tailoring and eventually founded the process of silk making, like I said, without hurting the worms, and spent most of his time in the temple garden tending to his silk moths. I'd also like for him to pick up blacksmithing because Firecloak is a forge god, but yeah, that's just... I don't want to make it too confusing. He was just peacefully tending to his crafts for a very long time. Gonair was quickly unimpressed with him. House Innos, once again, is quite the mighty, bloodthirsty house, which directly conflicts with Rindris' beliefs. So naturally, Rindris wasn't too close to his family. Gonair eventually began to force Rindris into combat training to try and harden him, which became more and more brutal, eventually forcing Rindris into life-or-death battles, or so Gonair led Rindris to believe. The combatants were actually being controlled. Gonair didn't really want to kill his creation. He thought there could be potential in him somewhere, you know? Didn't want to just throw all that away. Just wanted to harden him. As it can probably be assumed, Rindris didn't take very well to this. He began struggling with his demonic blood, becoming more and more prone to fits of incoherent rage. And finally, he snapped. He realized he could never truly be at peace, as there was way too much evil in this world, like his own father. Though I wouldn't personally say Gonair is evil, he's just led astray, but perspectives. During one of these deadly training battles, as Gonair lashed at Rindris to kill, Rindris turned and struck Gonair. Unfortunately for him, Gonair is a level 20 sorcerer fighter at this point, so though it wounds him, it doesn't go very well for Rindris. Now at this point, things are even rougher and need a lot of work. I have only been working on this character for a little while after all. Rindris will probably be imprisoned under the palace, which, fun for him, is built on the slopes of a volcano. I'm unsure if potentially maybe one of his friends that I've been working on helps him get away from the palace, where he causes panic among the Ash Elves for his demonic appearance, and thus a group of elven demon hunters seeks him out, though Gonair probably would have had him dragged back to the palace before they got to him. Or simply if after the incident with Gonair, this group hears about a demon in the palace, but either way, we've been working on a group similar to the Illidari, a group of former elves which, after the events of the Hellfire incursion, which is what it sounds like, in the epilogue of our last campaign, a bunch of devils invaded the world, we put a stop to it. But yeah, a bunch of elves sought to put an end to all devils and demons, but took on their power to efficiently destroy them, turning them into tieflings in the process, and being generally shunned by elven society. Once again, we just like to feed into whatever's fun in our D&D world. Like, sometimes you just want to be a demon hunter. Like, it's fine, you know? It's our own game. This so far unnamed group of demon hunters will eventually kidnap Rindris, I'm thinking, as they were sent out to kill what they thought was a demon, but found just a very tall tiefling instead. So they brought him back to their leader, unsure of what to do with him. Rindris ends up joining them for some time, happy to be around other beings similar to him and that experience the same struggles with their blood, and thus will end up wherever he needs to be for the next campaign. We're actually going to be playing Descent to Avernus before this campaign, so I'm excited to kind of lead into Rindris' story by being one of these demon hunters. Is it literally going to just be Kane's Sun Fury? Absolutely. I hope he lives through it so he and Rindris can still be buds. But yeah, that's about all I have for him right now. I hope it all made sense. I wrote all of this right before my wisdom teeth surgery, so my brain was kind of in panic mode. But I wanted to write this up as a nice little distraction. I just hope it didn't end up too confusing. It was certainly longer than I meant for it to be, and as I said, I will probably change a lot in time, especially once I begin taking it and putting it into my own world, where I don't want the Ash Elves to just be tropical Dunmer, and I don't want Rindris to just be a literal demon hunter in my own novels. But I thought you guys might like to hear the process so far nonetheless. I might make a follow-up video to this someday, I don't know, hopefully you guys like this sort of thing. As I said, I would definitely be interested in doing more of these. I have been working on more character backstory videos, and I've been working a lot on world building, so I feel like it'd be really interesting to start a series up on that. I'm just I'm kind of nervous. It's so early in development, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, just let me know if you guys are interested. If you are, you might leave a like on this video. If you want to help support the channel, you might consider donating to my Ko-fi or Patreon. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.